Hey guys, I want to do a quick follow up. I didn't want a whole another month long gap to go by. So here goes episode 7 of my Godzilla dissection. For episode 7, I will be doing Godzilla x MechaGodzilla, known in America as Godzilla against MechaGodzilla. This is the 26th Godzilla film in the Japanese film series, 27th if you want to include the whole Godzilla thing as a whole, which would include 1998 film, my bad. And it is the only Godzilla movie in the Millennium series to have a sequel. The book came in 2002 and 2003. We will be blessed with the Godzilla Tokyo SOS. So with that said, let's delve down into what this movie's all about. Now, this movie features the return of director Masaaki Tezuka, who is a pretty good director as far as I'm concerned. Previously, he handled Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which in some ways is better than this movie. In certain ways, you know, they collide a lot between me. I still think Godzilla Tokyo SOS is better than both this one and Mechagodzilla to me in some ways. But this movie holds its own compared to other Godzilla films quite a bit, and it's not one of my personal favorites, but it's still pretty good. It holds up pretty well, especially in the modern era where you want to get to, you know, people are really getting back into Godzilla and they want to see some of the more recent ones. This is a good one. Although certain things they do get wrong, I wish they had not done, but overall it holds together pretty well. I guess the first thing I'll focus on is the cast. The lead character is basically Yumiko Shaku, who plays the character of Akane, who plays a very small role in the sequel, unfortunately, but in this first movie, she's pretty much the main focus of the story, and she's a very similar character to the character we see in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, which is the battle-scarred veteran female character, which is pretty awesome. The good thing I notice here when I rewatch this movie is that she's still a very different character than we see in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. The character in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla was definitely scarred by the attack by Godzilla, but she was very determined to see the mission through to the end. She definitely was not introverted. She was ready to fight and go all the time, aggressive. Yumiko Shaku plays a very different version of that. She's a lot more quiet and just a lot more, I guess she has a lot more depressed feeling to the role, which is pretty good. Very different take on it. And she doesn't really, get too into the battle until the very end. Then she really wants to fight alongside MechaGodzilla full force, and I admire that transition quite a bit. We also have some other actors in here who are very good. We also have both my bad. We also have Kiranaka returning from the Heisei series as the Prime Minister. He was General Aso from the Heisei series. He played pretty much, I think, in all the movies after, I believe Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla was the first one. 1993, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. After that, he started in the following three. He did a pretty good role. That's why he came back pretty much for a lot of the Millennium movies. And I forgot, we also have a very short appearance by Kui Mizuno, who has starred in some of the most popular Godzilla movies in the past, like Ghidorah the Red Monster, and of course Mothra vs. Godzilla vs. Sea Monster, and of course Invasion of Astro Monster. Some of the best. Actually, Kui Mizuno was not in Ghidorah the Head Monster. I'm mixing up my characters a little bit, my actresses, but she was in, I know for sure, it's Invasion of Astro Monster and Godzilla vs. Sea Monster. That I know for sure. And I remember because she was a Hot Islander chick. That's me. And then also as a side character we have Dr. Uehara, who's played by Shin Takuma. He's a pretty interesting character. And then also we have his daughter Sarah. I don't remember the actress who plays her. She also plays a role. And the interesting about this movie is it definitely plays as kind of like a melodrama kind of, which was interesting, and it works really well. It adds more to the characters, between them blaming each other for, whose fault it is that Godzilla's back, and whether or not Akane belongs on the team. Those things do add needed elements to the story, which make it flow a little better and add, some substance when Godzilla's not on screen. So, to the monsters themselves, I guess I should say the story real bit before I get to the monsters. The story is written by Wataru Mimura, and the story is pretty interesting. The story basic synopsis is thus that Godzilla attacks once again, like in the 90s, and Akami rides out to stop him in the major tanks. Of course, it doesn't go well. She ends up inadvertently, I guess you could say, causing the death of a teammate, and Godzilla basically wrecks their shit. And then years later, they perfect a new weapon program, but instead of Dimension Tide this time, it's MechaGodzilla. And then from there, Godzilla once again comes back, and a horrible conflict ensues because MechaGodzilla betrays humanity at first. More to that later. And then, from there it's all chaos. Until the very end, they finally figure out how to beat Godzilla this time. So, delving into the monster characters, who, of course, we came here to see, of course. MechaGodzilla, this is the first movie where MechaGodzilla was definitely the lead character. And this is definitely still a Godzilla movie, but MechaGodzilla definitely takes the lead role over Godzilla in this movie, which is definitely different from any of the previous movies that had MechaGodzilla in them. The basic story is that MechaGodzilla this time around is a cyborg, kind of like the Showa series, but this time he's directly created from the Godzilla bones of the original Godzilla. I mean, if you want to be a real, die-hard fan, you could always be angry because in the original movie, 1954, we see Godzilla's body completely melted down, so it makes you wonder how the hell they got the bones. And of course, in this movie, there's a newly shot scene, all CG, where the original Godzilla is melted down, this time leaving the bones. So there's a little bit of a retcon there. If you don't know what a retcon is, basically, kind of changing the original source material to fit the new material, which would normally piss a lot of people off. I mean, to me, for the sake of it making a very interesting story, I didn't mind it so much. I mean, why not? It's very interesting. It has a new element to this MechaGodzilla that makes it really cool. And yeah, it definitely adds some flavor to Kira this time because, like I said, once Kiryu finally meets Godzilla, all hell breaks loose because Kiryu then thinks he's the original Godzilla and goes on a rampage. And the only way they finally stop him is basically when his power runs out. They just can't do shit to stop him. This version of MechaGodzilla is one of my favorites. He looks really good. And so I'm surprised the new Godzilla game, I guess kind of a side branch, kind of not. This version of MechaGodzilla 2002 Kiryu is not in the game. We only get 2003, at least as far as I know. I still haven't actually played the game yet. I'm kind of saving my money, but I definitely will be getting it soon in the next 2 weeks or so. Don't worry about that. But this MechaGodzilla definitely is a lot less. He has definitely a different look than the 2003 version, especially the jetpack, which is a nice blue, something I haven't seen paired with MechaGodzilla. Usually is all silver, but this time we have a little blue in there, which is nice. It looks really good. He also has different weapons in the ones in the 2003 version. He has the electrocuting machete, which is really nice and awesome. And of course, he has the absolute zero cannon, the weapon that cannot hit Godzilla for shit, but when it finally does, it does damage, which is nice. But overall, I really liked this version of MechaGodzilla, and when I first saw this movie, it kind of threw me off, because this movie definitely, like I said before, is definitely a MechaGodzilla movie first and foremost. Godzilla is definitely just the villain, not the focus of the movie. And it took me time to really accept that. And to me, this film, it's really odd because there are a few films that sure have kind of done the same thing, but this one not to the same degree. Because Godzilla is just a straight up villain. Like, when I get to this, I'll get to delve into the Godzilla aspect of it all. Godzilla, to me, in this movie lacks character, which is maybe an odd thing to say, but if you really watch these movies a lot, you'll notice differences between this Godzilla and then the Godzilla that would appear not only in the sequel, Godzilla Tokyo SOS, but also in other Godzilla movies in general. Firstly, this Godzilla is, I don't know, I don't want to say cowardly, I guess, but a little more animalistic in certain senses. It's the first time I see Godzilla run away from a fight, and basically I'm talking about that very first fight where they first meet, and the build-up is awesome. They finally meet in the ruined city, they're about to start fighting. And then MechaGodzilla unloads on Godzilla for a while there. Godzilla kind of just sits there like a statue. And it's kind of like, wait, what? What the hell's going on? He's just sitting there taking these blows, not doing anything about it. And then once MechaGodzilla hits him with the Maser Ray from his mouth, then Godzilla reacts, roars. MechaGodzilla loses control, and Godzilla, what do you know, flees off into the ocean, which is very odd story-wise. Godzilla has never done that before, and hasn't done it since. Godzilla's never ran away from our opponent before, ever. To me, that first meeting between Godzilla and Kiryu needed a lot more. They just needed to do a whole lot more with the writing right there. If you're gonna have Godzilla leave, have him leave because he's injured, and then have him come back in the finale, which he does eventually come back. This time he's not afraid of MechaGodzilla, and they fight balls out, which is awesome. However, the first meet was a little damaged because of the fact that Godzilla runs away, which just made no sense. It's just something he's never done, and Godzilla should never do. That's one of my major quips with the movie. The first fight was a little lackluster. Because I should have said quarrels with the movie. One of my major quarrels with the movie is the first meet between Godzilla and MechaGodzilla is a little lackluster. But from there, I mean, it goes from there. The film doesn't mess up ever again, which I do appreciate. Excuse me. MechaGodzilla goes on a very awesome rampage. I love it. Mitch Oshima, who did the score for Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla and Tokyo West, does a really good score here, and we haven't seen MechaGodzilla wreck shit since Terror MechaGodzilla and the original MechaGodzilla. Although in the original MechaGodzilla we only destroyed one building, so it wasn't that great destruction scenes. And Terror MechaGodzilla we could see him destroy, just fuck up Tokyo, pardon my language. And here we get to see a little bit of that again, so it's pretty cool. And it adds an element to the story, you know, should we trust this guy? I mean, sure we made him, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, the story here is definitely more on MechaGodzilla. MechaGodzilla destroyed that we question and we don't know what to do. Godzilla, unlike most movies, we don't know why Godzilla's coming back this time. This time, unlike MechaGears or Godzilla 2000 or GMK, there's no clear directive for Godzilla. And then I think they kind of hint at it in this movie, and it's definitely a lot more developed in the next movie, where they say that Godzilla is straight up, you know, he wants to meet Kiryu again, he just wants to fight him again, which makes sense, definitely, and it definitely gets more developed later on, but here it's kind of left to wonder why Godzilla ever came about in the first place. I mean, when he appears in the 90s in this movie, he's not after a radiation source, he just kind of appears. And don't get me wrong, I love that opening scene, I love it. It's in the rain, and it's really awesomely shot. I love that battle scene. It's just like Godzilla lacks a clear directive in this movie, which just kind of bugged me. Which is a shame, because I really love this version of Godzilla. 2002, 2003 version looks really amazing. This version basically looked the same, 2003, except for he would have the chest scar later on after the battle in this movie. But, you know, character-wise aside, being a kind of a plain villain to the more developed hero, MechaGodzilla, Godzilla looks pretty awesome in this, and he has a lot of great scenes. This is a very short movie, about 88 minutes, which is kind of disappointing. One of the shortest of the movies since the Showa era. This is like Mothra vs. Godzilla length. But overall, it doesn't bother me that it's short, because they fit a lot of action into it. So even though they could have done a lot more with the Godzilla, writing-wise, the action and the special effects are pretty damn good, especially since it had to follow up after GMK, which hit so hard in special effects and did them so damn well that you were hoping to see this movie could, you know, follow up with that, and it does in a lot of ways. It does it really well. What this movie does lack, of course, after GMK, is a lot of the Godzilla-human interaction. The most you really get out of this one is that Godzilla is nearing a hospital. The humans kind of look at him, and I'm not quite sure if he was looking at them, but that's kind of the most you get. And it really sucks when you compare this movie with, I guess, Final Wars, one of the few highlights of Final Wars. And of course GMK, which did this so damn well. In 2000 they had Godzilla actually looking at the humans. You really felt that he was there, you know. I hate it when it's just Godzilla. I mean, I hate to say this. I hate it when it's just Godzilla from a distance and that's all you ever see as far as humans looking at him. That's something even the 2014 film got right. You need to have a human looking directly at Godzilla, Godzilla looking directly at a human to feel that connection needs to be there. Otherwise, it doesn't feel complete. This film didn't have that, unfortunately, and 2003 film wouldn't have it either. Tokyo SOS, unfortunately, but like I said, the focus is more on Kiryu. So how you like that, I guess, is just up to your preference. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but this movie would probably worked a whole lot better if they fused this one in 2003 into one much longer movie with more developed characters and a more developed storyline about Godzilla and MechaGodzilla's connection. It could have been like really freaking epic. And don't get me wrong, so like this movie, I really, really love Tokyo SOS, one of my favorite movies ever as far as Godzilla goes. But this one is kind of the weak start to an interesting premise, very interesting premise, but one they don't deliver on fully until the next movie. And even then, it's a little different because they don't bring Akane back. They bring different characters, but it works out in its own way. So I know I crammed a whole lot in there. I really did. But like I said, this movie is still really good. It's still a really good movie. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I wish the characters would addressed more Godzilla. Imagine this: if you built up Godzilla and MechaGodzilla, what they both want, they have conflicting interests and whatnot, you could have had a much longer movie and a more interesting movie. So I can definitely say this movie delivers an interesting premise, and it delivers a lot of great action. Godzilla is probably the weakest part of this movie, ironically, because they don't develop him enough. Human characters get a lot of development, though. So overall, it evens out to me to like I definitely would say like a 7.5 out of 10. Like definitely a high C, like a B minus. Just because the first meet between MechaGodzilla and Godzilla needed a lot more tension. I mean, compared to the previous Godzilla movies where they first meet. In the first original MechaGodzilla movie, 1974, they meet. It's pretty epic. Two Godzillas, they fight. The blast to meet in that epic scene, and Godzilla leaves because he gets hurt. You see the blood bubbling up from the water. In 1993, they first meet. They have that epic, long, drawn-out fight in the mountains. MechaGodzilla and Godzilla both take a beating, and eventually Godzilla triumphs, and that's why he leaves. But pretty awesome fight regardless. It was nice and long when they first meet. This movie needed that initial fight to be a lot better for me. So definitely 7.5 out of 10. It's still a really good movie. Still one of the better Godzilla movies to me. It just needed a little more help with the writing section. So I'm hoping when the American films do MechaGodzilla, or if the Japanese films do them again, which undoubtedly one of them will definitely do it. Legendary has not confirmed MechaGodzilla for the second film. They pretty much already said their monster cast is going to be King Ghidorah, Mothra, Rodan, and Godzilla. But hopefully for the third Legendary film to bring back MechaGodzilla, they definitely should. It's one of the most popular ones out there. They definitely need to readdress this storyline and just, really revamp it and do it really hardcore, do it very, very well. Or Japanese films could possibly do MechaGodzilla again. He's definitely popular in Japan, definitely a popular monster that they use often. And yeah, that'd be awesome. Because Kiryu definitely didn't see his day, especially because the second film took SOS. At the end of the credits, they hint at another MechaGodzilla movie. Because you see the DNA of Godzilla they have in the little lab, and you wonder what's going to happen next. But they never followed up on that idea because the Godzilla Planet Wars came out, which definitely brings the whole point of the Millennium series. Definitely should have just been one continuous thing, and then they probably could have included that in Final War somehow. But I guess I'm kind of going off on a tangent, aren't I? Overall, though, this movie is still really fantastic. It holds up in a lot of ways, and if you're just in it for the Godzilla action, it will definitely entertain the hell out of you. If you're a diehard Godzilla analyst like me, some certain things will bug you, but it still entertains even me. I'm still impressed by a lot of the aspects of this movie. Godzilla and Kiryu look great, the music is freaking fantastic, great score, and the cinematography is pretty good too. It's pretty darn good. It's definitely on the higher tier of Millennium films as opposed to 2000 and Final Wars, but definitely not as good as GMK SOS. Definitely not quite up to that level. Not even MechaGodzilla. MechaGodzilla to me is still a lot better than this movie in a lot of ways. Although most people usually think the other way around. Usually people think MechaGodzilla is usually Tezuka's weakest film, which is kind of odd to me. It always has been that they usually view MechaGodzilla as his weakest film, but that's because it has a very different tone than this one as far as the fights go. Oh yeah, I guess I should have commented on that. The fights in this movie. The fights in this movie are pretty good. I still like the fights in the second movie a lot more because they're, I guess you could say, more realistic. They don't involve as much like literal punching and tossing around of Godzilla. But overall, the fights are still really good in this movie. Not as good as the second movie, but still really good, interesting. And of course, we finally see a weapon that really tears Godzilla up. You know, it's always MechaGodzilla who really wounds Godzilla badly. Even in the Showa era, he freaking wrecked him, made him bleed profusely. And then the second time he appeared in Heisei, he paralyzed him. In this movie, we have him here blowing the crater in his chest with the Absolute Zero Cannon. Of course, the Absolute Zero Cannon, the weapon that freezes things and then crushes them. Interesting weapon. Of course, they didn't bring it back for the second movie for plot reasons, and I like that. It was handled well. But like I said, here, of course, there are some story complications. Like, it's so hard for MechaGodzilla to hit freaking Godzilla with the Absolute Zero Cannon and hit him to the very end with it. Meanwhile, the major tanks always hit Godzilla and they can't do anything. So if think about it, if you put the Absolute Zero Cannon on a laser tank, you might just hit him a lot sooner than you expected. But like I said, this story complication, this plot hole, doesn't really amount to much, and once they finally do hit Godzilla with him, it does not have the same effect as when it hits a building or something, completely freezing it. It just hits him really hard in the chest at point blank range, and it does a lot of damage. It makes the retreat, which is, I love the ending of this movie. You know, you see the wounded MechaGodzilla, you see the wounded MechaGodzilla, wounded Godzilla, and they both part ways to fight again later. And humans say it's still a victory. You know, they did drive Godzilla off, but they would definitely meet again. And then it ends with an awesome shot of Mikami on the shoulder of MechaGodzilla looking out as Godzilla retreats back on the ocean. That's an awesome ending. I just wish they had a lot more writing with attention between the two characters of Kiro and Godzilla to really excel to the level it needed to be at. Excuse me. But I know it went on quite a bit about this one. This is still a really good movie though. Check it out. 7.5 out of 10, just to reiterate. And yeah, there goes my conclusion of episode 7 of Godzilla Dissection. Definitely check this one out. It's my favorites. I believe this one's on Blu-ray now. I'll definitely check it out. As far as dubs go, the dub for this one's alright. I still prefer this one Japanese language a lot more than American dub. The best American dub for the Millennium series still goes to GMK. Pretty solid. But yeah. Whew. I had a lot to say with this movie. I always do. But definitely check this one out, and hopefully MechaGodzilla comes back in the future as a fully developed character. That's it, G-fans.